Welcome to the Mystical Dream Studio.
Greetings, everyone! Welcome back to the Mystical Dream Studio. I, once again, am your host, Madman McQueen. Oh, it's the day after Christmas, December 26, 2022, and Santa left me a little something in my stocking. Let's see what the fat man has to say, shall we? Madman, heard you've been naughty, so here's the scoop. All you get is snowman poop. Oh, Santa, you slay me. Let's see what this is. Very long ribbon. Squishy. Not bad. Christmas. Christmas Eve, I always wonder, how much does it cost to run Santa's sleigh? My father once told me, $8, $9 if it's in bad weather. Well, the story I'm going to tell you today has to do with a little girl who was having a bit of a crisis on Christmas Eve. But before I go into that, let me go into... Oh, my dog Roxy is barking at something again. Today is my own recommendation. Witch's Brew. In my own wonderful Christmas cup. Witch's Brew. Don't know exactly what it is or how they grind it, but next time you go to your local coven, ask for their special blend of Witch's Brew coffee. It'll be a real eye-opener. Today's story is called The Ghosts of Christmas Eve. 10-year-old Emma Coulter was a very unhappy child. Her mother was arrested for attempted bank robbery, and her father had spent the last 2 years in prison for drug-related offenses. Now she was at the hands and mercy of the foster care system. Problem was, her foster parents didn't really care about her. She was just money in the bank as far as they were concerned, so they could take their vacations. They even stole her identity to get their cable hooked up. She knew that was wrong, but Emma didn't know how to fight that. Also, the foster father abused her constantly. She had to escape. She didn't know what to do or where to go, but she knew she had to get away. So one night, it was Christmas Eve, freezing cold outside, snowing, but she had no choice. She packed a bag, put on her warmest clothes, and climbed out the window into the snow and disappeared into the night. She didn't know where she was going to go, but she knew that she had to go somewhere, and the only place she could think of was St. John Mary Vianney Catholic Church. She always took comfort there, the only place she truly felt at peace. But tragedy had recently befallen the church. A fire destroyed the building, and also her beloved music group with Brian the Cantor all perished in the blaze. But this was Christmas Eve, Jesus' birthday. So where else would she go to get comfort but a church? And the only church she knew was St. John Mary Vianney. So she walked the miles and miles in the moonlight, trudging through snow. Her feet were becoming soaking wet as the wet snow soaked her feet, soaked her socks and shoes, and she could barely feel her own toes anymore. Till she came across the crime scene of the church. She passed the barricade tape. And there were plenty of openings, so she found her way inside, getting all covered with soot. And she walked through what was left of the once beautiful building. There was hardly any roof left, and the moonlight cast shadows about. But she went up to a pew near the front where the altar used to be, and she laid down, put her little bag on the pew, and put her head down to sleep, shivering in the cold. And she prayed as she tried to drift off to some sort of sleep, begging God, please help me, Lord, please help me. When she heard a voice, a sweet voice, a man's voice, a voice she knew. So she looked up, and coming out of the shadows where the altar used to be was a man, and as he stepped into the moonlight, she recognized him as Brian the cantor. The man seemed surprised to see her. Emma? Emma Coulter, is that you? The girl was surprised, at the least, to see him. Brian? He says, yes. What are you doing here? He asked her. And she didn't know how to respond. The shock of seeing him was a little much for her at that moment. She said, Brian, I heard you were dead. And he sort of looked at her and says, well, I am. But my friends and I decided that we would spend Christmas Eve here at the church. This has been our home away from home for many, many years. And we thought that we would give one last performance in honor of Jesus on this one Christmas Eve night. But the question is, little girl, what are you doing here? Emma was searching for the right words. How was she going to explain the tragedy that was her life? How would she explain things that she didn't fully comprehend herself? So she just started to cry. And whatever words came out was the best she could do. She just told Brian about her mom and her dad, about the misery of her childhood, about her foster parents, about the abuse, and she just had to get away. Just had to get away. And Brian, he understood. He sat down next to her and put his arm around her to give her some comfort and some warmth. After all, the little girl was freezing. She was shivering and almost icy cold herself. Brian tried to use words of comfort to ease the girl's inner suffering. But the girl just kept saying that there had to be a better life out there. There had to be something better, something greater. Life couldn't be this cruel. And she just hoped and prayed that God would find it in his heart to grant her peace, to grant her some happiness. Brian said, God listens to everyone, and he answers prayers in his own good way, in his own good time. She just had to have faith. Faith in herself, faith in her abilities, and faith in God, that he will protect her. Things may not make a whole lot of sense at the moment, but God has a long-term plan for each of us. She just has to take comfort in that and strive to get through life the best she can and always remain good and pure. I'll tell you what. He said, we're here for one last performance. How would you like to be our audience? And she was a little confused. What do you mean? He says, this is Christmas. We're going to give Jesus a birthday present. We're going to sing to him. One last performance before we move on to wherever we're going. And how would you like to be our audience for this evening? And she said, I would like that very much. So he kissed her on the forehead and got up. He went up to the front where the altar used to be. He stood and faced where the congregation would sit with little Emma right there in the front pew. Just looked the moonlight shine down on him, and his face began to glow. And he opened his mouth, and the sweetest voice that she had ever heard, sweeter than she had ever heard him sing, just came out of him. He sang a sweet and wonderful song, full of hope, full of wonder. And then she heard a piano in this empty, empty church. And she looked off, and in the shadows, there was the piano player. She didn't remember seeing a piano there before, but there he was, accompanying Brian on the piano. And then she heard voices, the most angelic and wonderful choir. There was the choir section right there of the music group. They stood on risers off to the other side, and they joined in harmonious accompaniment. And then violins and cellos, everything just joined together into the most wonderful and amazing sound that Emma had ever heard, and her soul cried out in happiness and joy. And this was the most amazing moment that she could ever remember, that she would ever experience in her life. And her soul felt at peace. It felt joyful. This was a Christmas miracle. The foster parents notified the police that Emma was missing, and a search went on. They found Emma in the front pew of the church, the police did. She was unconscious and nearly frozen to death, but the paramedics arrived and revived her. They stabilized her vitals and they took her to the hospital. One thing they couldn't remove from her hand was the little angel pin that used to be on Brian's lapel. The angel pin that she adored every time she would see him sing. But now somehow she had that in her hand and she wouldn't let it go. Upon inspection, the doctors looked over her body and found the evidence of abuse, the bruises and everything that indicated that she had been abused for a significant period of time. So the police were notified. The foster parents were investigated and ultimately arrested. Emma, in the long run, was adopted by a wonderful and sweet family who cared for her as dearly as if she was their own child. The courts didn't recognize the parental rights of her natural mother and father, who, as it turns out, couldn't stay out of jail. But it didn't matter because Emma found true happiness, true peace, and she felt like she found a family for the first time in her young life. She thanked God, and she always kept that little angel pin close to her heart as a reminder of Brian, the cantor, and the music group that gave her the most precious gift she had ever received. And she knew that they were part of the answer to the prayer that she gave to God. They were the ghosts of Christmas Eve, and she was forever thankful. Thank you for listening, folks. Please comment, like, and subscribe to this channel. I would love to hear what you have to say. Ah, yes, more is coming. Don't forget, following the first of the year, I'm going to be continuing my Beyond Forever Tales. But for right now, I'm going to continue to try and do as many of these Madman McQueen videos as I can. So, stay tuned, folks. And for what it's worth, Merry Christmas! It's a day late, but Merry Christmas anyway. Happy New Year, that's coming up. And you all take care. Until next time, do as you imagine, and the stars shall light the way for your dreams. Take care.